Hey, we are here with a fun kind of session zero-ish sort of thing. I guess we kind of already did session zero for this, but will be a little preview of
session 0.5.
Yes, sure. Of the next campaign we're going to be doing on here on this channel. And I'm not the GM for this one, so I'll let Connor take it away.
So the idea for this RPG is we are playing, each of the characters are playing themselves in a world of a nuclear apocalypse has happened. I think it's 5 years in the future actually, no, I think each character, because we started it in 2015, right?
Yes.
And so I think
10
each
years
character is now, it was 10 years.
It was 10 years,
okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. But I think it's probably been at least a year after that in game.
Yeah.
I guess you should explain that first. What is Orphans of the American Dream?
Yeah, so Orphans of the American Dream is an RPG where everybody is playing themselves, except they get to change one thing about themselves, and it's, I guess for us now, each character is playing themselves 6 years older, and they get to change one thing about themselves or one thing about their backstory or their past to make it so that it's more plausible that they would actually survive in an apocalyptic situation.
Because we realized as it stood, almost none of us would actually survive.
Yeah. We would all certainly be dead. So the RPG kind of began as just something like a fun experiment that we were doing, but it also allowed us to be able to play RPG with a lot of people who didn't play RPG normally. Whereas, you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, it's very nerdy. People have to be kind of in a specific, have specific tastes in order for them to enjoy an RPG like Dungeons and Dragons.
This is a much greater suspension of disbelief for Dungeons and Dragons than you in 6 years, but a jerk and killing people.
which is what David chose for his character.
I mean, I feel like that was a pretty common thread generally, but it's just more
wasn't
exaggerated.
Me. Couldn't be me. Wasn't me. I didn't do it.
Shot people.
I did shoot people, but okay. All right. Anyway.
So we did Orphans of the American Dream in person before we were streaming any type of RPG, and I think we did it for probably like 2 years or so.
On and off,
but it was super on and off. So I think we probably did like 7 sessions total, maybe.
Something like that, yeah.
But we kind of got to a point where we stopped for a while and we wanted to pick it up again. And there were issues with like scheduling and stuff like that. And so we just kind of put it on the back burner. I think actually we went from Orphans to Crow Inquisitors, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so. Yeah. I think Orphans was the most prominent RPG we were doing between 2015 and 2016 when we started it. Yeah.
So from the beginning of when we've actually been streaming, like you could say our quote unquote career as RPG people.
Yeah, our streaming career.
This is basically right before we started streaming, is we were doing Orphans.
Yep.
And so our idea here is to pick it up where we left off, give you guys kind of a bit of a recap in this kind of video here.
But honestly, like the situation we found ourselves in is pretty good for like a soft reboot anyway. Like,
yes,
you could not know anything about what happened before and be able to pick up what's going to happen.
Yes.
As its own self-isolated or self-contained thing.
And even character sheet wise as well, we did a soft reboot for the character sheets so that people are back to level 1, quote unquote. The system we're using for this is the Fate Core system. And so that's the system we made our characters in. And
I wish I had the book to like show the camera right now, but I do not.
It's
on my bookshelf back there. So
yeah. So that'll be what we're using. And Fate's Core is very story oriented, a lot less about the rules, I guess you could say. And I guess
that's
say
not
necessarily
true. It's just the rules focus on different parts of
that's what I
game than D&D, right? Like where D&D is like all about like number crunching.
Yeah, it's much less granular, but
yeah,
it's the rules are still involved probably as much. It's just that they're so much less granular.
I would say the rules are less pointed at combat and more pointed at story.
At
like
narrative,
the mechanics of the game are more oriented towards the narrative rather than I hit them or I succeed.
I would agree that the bulk of the rules apply to most situations as opposed to D&D, where the bulk of the rules apply only to combat. So I think that's probably a fair assessment. Yeah.
So that's the system we're going to be using primarily for the reasons as to what we gave as to why we thought that would be helpful for Orphans.
And just a note for you, Connor, I did do a little bit of a search and found one of the Fate books that I have has rules for like a post-apocalyptic thing. So it has a couple of like extra rules. Some of it we won't be using just because it's like about like, well, I mean, you might use some of it if you want to. It's about mutations and stuff.
But fight a giant mutated bear that tackled a tree to try and kill me. So
there are the things that I think would interest you in that, and I'll make sure you get the link to that. I'll
definitely do that.
Mutated animals. They had some stat blocks in there for mutated animals, so that could be interesting for you. And then they also had a couple. Maybe there's one thing I think I'm forgetting, but the thing I remember for sure is communities. And the way they like. It's like you basically have a character sheet for your community, and it quickly explains how you can basically make the character sheet similar to an actual character sheet, but like why the different skills do different things for a community than they do for a character.
That's so perfect.
Yeah, so that should be fun.
A city that you guys go into will have aspects that you guys can invoke.
Aspects and have skills and
Oh, that's awesome. That's so perfect. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Yeah. So that's kind of the system we'll be using as kind of the niche for the system. Our I guess you could say home rules, and we'll kind of get into those as we play as to how it's different than Fate Core. But if you've never heard of Fate Core before and you're just here for a good story, then
don't worry about
it. Onward. So
I thought Scooby-Doo was going to go somewhere else. I thought you were going to say Scooby-Doo or something. And I was like, wow, that's harsh. I gotcha.
So essentially, the story, as it were, was a nuclear apocalypse and a worldwide nuclear apocalypse. Every single nuke that was on the face of the planet from every different country was all set off at the same time. Right. So all these nukes sent off, and
basically almost every major city was hit by a nuclear bomb.
Just desolated civilization worldwide. So it's not like it's just America and you guys are trying to figure out how to get to a different country. The whole world has been just desolated. And so the story kind of began, I think, 10 years, we said, after the apocalypse happened, where all of the characters kind of met in one town, and just by happenstance, they were like, oh, we all got here at the same time. That's so strange. I guess except for Josh. Josh's character didn't come until later.
Technically, David's didn't either.
Oh, I guess you're right.
Right. We started off with me and Jared, and then several others. But David's character came in later.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, and I guess we should explain. It'll be Caleb, David, Jared, and Josh, who are our four main characters for the standard group story. Yeah. Well, except for Carly, because Carly's usually a part of that standard group.
Yep.
And Adam was for Chrome Inquisitors, but wasn't after that. But Adam also did play Orphans, and I think if he has the time, I'll have him join as a guest for one of the episodes.
Yeah.
But we'll get into that later. So anyway, the story kind of, I guess in a general sense, and I'm not going to go through each detail, but the main characters fought this gang that had taken over Janesville, which was the city we all were like a part of at the time that we started Orphans. We thought that'd be cool to kind of take a city we actually knew, take places in that city as our locations, as our stage, and play with what could happen in a nuclear apocalypse.
Yeah.
In that community, all those types of things. And so you guys were fighting like this gang that had kind of taken over Janesville. And then Reapers. From there was a character whose children got kidnapped. And I should say children in quotes, because she had adopted a bunch of children
bunch of orphans.
into like her orphanage. and she had this school bus that she called the Magic School Bus to keep the children in high morale. And so her children were kidnapped by a guy named Pablo.
So you
guys chased Pablo to Bloomington, Illinois, where you guys fought against the same gang, I think.
Wasn't like Danny?
So bad.
Yes,
one of the evil guys in there, and
yes. Jared's gaming posse friends,
right? We're like
we're the bad guys.
Yeah,
that were not a part of the Reapers, which was the gang you guys originally fought, but a different gang that was a part of Bloomington. And so the Reapers and the gang in Bloomington fought it out, and you guys were all caught in the middle of it. And what happened was you guys did find Maddie's kids, but only some of them. The rest of them had been killed or sold off into other slave trades or whatever. Yes, and so there were only a few kids, which you guys dropped off with Trevor's character, what is obviously Trevor, and Nate's character, who's obviously Nate. At this satellite.
Not satellite. Radio tower.
Radio tower. Yeah. I don't know how I confused satellite and radio tower.
We went into space.
Yeah. Hey, that's possible. No, okay. So, you guys dropped off those kids there, to keep them safe.
Yep, I remember that stuff.
And then you guys had it out in Bloomington with these two rival gangs. You were caught in the middle of it, and you guys beat the big bad guys or whatever. And except for Jared, who got captured, and you guys all
stayed
escaped.
Behind, didn't he? I feel like he did it intentionally.
Didn't we get cornered by them in a warehouse, and then Jared
somebody was held hostage, and Jared said, "I will willingly give myself up.
Yeah,
you can have me," kind of a thing. And they took him hostage instead.
Didn't they have Hannah? Didn't they have Hannah locked?
They had two girls. I think it might have been Hannah, and I feel like it was somebody else.
Maybe Maddie then.
Maddie, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And I forget why Jared was able to make that trade. I feel like they wanted him for a specific reason.
Well, I mean, it was his gaming posse that was in charge of it, remember? So maybe that's the reason.
Right.
Well, and he wanted them to do that because his whole shtick was that he could fight lots of people at once. So
right. Yeah.
Man, I just remember us piling modifiers onto that final roll there to try to beat the army that was descending upon us in that warehouse.
That one time where I got a 12 to shoot down a
guy in a helicopter.
Yeah, and you were like, but what if he was the best pilot in the entire universe? And I was like, no, I'm so mad at you.
Yeah, that's true. That did happen.
Connor's a better GM.
Which is why I'm glad I am, and that was going to be part of this episode episode, quote unquote.
I mean, you weren't wrong necessarily. It's just my only problem with it was that was the first time anything like that had happened, and the last time anything like that happened, and so I felt so sniped. I was like, you got to be kidding me. But I mean, the whole point of the game was if stuff is easy, you rack up the difficulty. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
But I came so far to left field. I was like, you can't do this to me.
Why is this random helicopter pilot so great?
Why is Top Gun helping these people? Get out of here. But no, I mean, mostly I'm just giving you a hard time. Yeah.
Yeah. That's totally fine. And that's my job as a GM. If kind of like when you're parenting, if your kids have never said they hate you before, then you're not doing a good job of parenting. It's kind of like me as a GM.
Is that how that works?
I think it is. It's
yeah.
If your GM doesn't hate you,
it's not necessarily. Yeah.
Or if your players don't hate your GM.
I was going to say, if your kids have never said that, then you're probably not a good parent. But just because they have said it does not mean you automatically are a good parent.
That's also true.
Right?
It's kind of like when Jesus said, woe to you when all people speak well of you, for sort of their fathers are the false prophets. And some people take that to mean, if people hate you, then you're doing a good job. It's like,
that's not what he said.
Yeah.
You gotta be careful with that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, where were we? So we're talking about Bloomington.
Recap.
So Jared got captured, and you guys all escaped the city. And then
no! But before that, we had been searching out some weird mysterious thing that we had found, and we found
thank you.
Found an underground layer with some computers in it, and it was apparently a bunch of prophets named Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John that were involved in this weird prophecy where like the nukes, they prophesied that the nukes were going to happen and that there's more nukes out there.
I was gone for that massively important session where I missed all of the story of all evolution.
The entire lore dump, yeah.
Yes, so
the Sanderson Avalanche. I was just gone.
And then we accidentally we accidentally did something on the computer and sent a nuke to Bloomington. Remember?
Yes.
And that's why we left the city.
Yes. So what happened was you guys were like in the sewers and you like stumbled upon this like weird hideout. Mm-hmm. And there was this guy, his name is Matthew, his lair, and he like had prophesied, him and these 3 other guys had prophesied that the nukes were going to happen. And he had a computer that was tracking the other 5 nukes that hadn't gone off in the entire world, and they were in America. And he had like a tracking device on each of them. And I think Josh, when he hacked into the computer, it had a failsafe on it that sent a nuke to that location. And so like a timer was started or something like that was sending it to that location. And so you guys didn't know that though, and you guys left, and then the nuke went off after you guys escaped the city. But I think you guys as players knew that the nuke was going to go off, but I don't think you guys as characters knew that the nuke was going to go off. And so the nuke went off, and you guys thought that Jared died in the nuke because he was in the city. But what happened kind of off screen for you guys with Jared and I was that Connor Powers, me as the person, as my character in the game, rescued Jared and took him back to Europe with him and his gang, where they were fighting against Germany, who had kind of regained like a semblance of civilization and military, and was trying to take advantage of the situation in Europe and kind of conquer the territories. And so Connor, and because it's not me, is the character Connor in the game. Connor had set up like all these, basically like a guerrilla warfare kind of special ops team, and they were kind of doing guerrilla warfare tactics and combat with Germany and trying to,
because why not?
Yeah, trying to undermine their authority, that kind of a thing. And because literally, why not? And so Jared was rescued through that. What then you guys ended up going and doing is you guys sort of traveling around. I think you ended up in Montana or somewhere. Nebraska. You're right. You guys ended up in Nebraska, where you guys Caleb, you became the mayor of that city, mm-hmm. where you guys were kind of like keeping order and trying to start a semblance of civilization where you were.
I probably didn't call it that. I was probably the unofficial leader who was definitely in charge, but wouldn't ever say I was actually in charge, sort of a thing.
Yeah. And then you adopted a daughter
named Annabelle, I think.
Annabelle, yes. Or Annie, I thought it was, but I think Annabelle is correct.
I think Annabelle was her full name, yeah.
And then you married Maddie's character.
I married Maddie, yeah.
And David, you went off to save your wife because she had the radiation sickness.
Right, that was the whole reason that David's character came into this situation, is because he was trying to find a cure for her, and Hannah's character had been developing the cure for radiation, this weird radiation sickness that was going around. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so I'll get into kind of the lore of the world in a little bit. We'll talk about the radiation sickness. But so then, David, you left with the quote unquote cure with the radiation sickness, and you went to go save your wife with the cure. Mm-hmm. And you got there and it didn't work, and she died anyway. And so then you made your way back to Caleb. And I forget how you figured out where he was, but you went back to you went to Nebraska and found out where Caleb was.
Well, I found Lance first. I don't know if that was an indication of where I was supposed to go.
No,
I don't remember him telling me.
David met up with you before he got here. Remember? He was with you when you arrived.
Oh, he met up with Connor.
Town. Yeah.
And exactly. Connor met up with.
Yes, that's right. I think after the whole thing with Lance, my character met up with you, and then you brought me there. That sounds familiar. And then he left because he didn't want to be there after his wife died. So he was like, "I'm leaving." And then
sorry, Ruth
came up here because I was that was where everything else that he knew was. So he was just going this direction.
How did Ruth react when you told her that she had died in this role playing game?
Well, basically, I was like, because originally it was a possibility that she was going to play,
right?
And so she wouldn't have. But then I was like, the only reason my character would go anywhere without you is if the cure didn't work. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, basically, since she wasn't interested in playing, I was like,
she dies.
I hope I was there. I hope I was a good GM and a good friend and asked you if I could kill Offer's character before I.
Like I said, we weren't even sure up until like when we were going to play originally whether or not she was going to join. So it wasn't even finalized that was going to happen. So it was less that you asked me and more like you were letting me decide, and we just hadn't figured it out.
Oh, I remember now. Yeah,
because obviously if she was going to play, she wouldn't be dead.
Right.
So you were good.
Maybe she'll come on as a guest star and surprise you that she's not dead after all.
That would be a weird one.
Yeah. That would be strange. Yeah. Not sure how I would pull that one off.
Yeah. I think
I watched you die. I buried you.
I feel like this game is lacking the kind of consistently humorous overtones that would be required to carry her through something that's dark.
Yes.
She is not the biggest fan of grimdark. So
okay, yeah, that makes sense.
It would also almost entirely change all of the things that I've decided about my character since the last session, since he's the even bigger jerk now.
Yeah, so that's kind of update with your character, Kale. That's kind of update with David's character. Update with Jared's character. He kind of became like buddy with Connor over as he was a part of the Connor's crew for about 6 months to a year or something like that. I think about 6 months, and then it took them a while to get back to Nebraska with you guys. I don't remember the exact timeline there. Let's just say a year from Bloomington to where you guys meet up again. So the nuke at Bloomington to where you guys meet up in Nebraska. And Connor's character had been keeping tabs on all of you guys through his network, and knew where you guys were going to be because he'd been making sure he kept track of where you guys were. And so he went and found you guys when he found out that there were 4 other nukes in America that hadn't gone off yet. And so he was going to go and make sure that and find the nukes before Germany did. And he was worried that they also caught word that there were still nukes that could be used, and he didn't want Germany to have that power to conquer Europe with the threat of nuclear warheads. And so that was his plan. So he went and found you guys, knowing that you guys were specialists and knowing that you guys had the computer that Matthew had that had the tracking for the nukes. You guys actually know where they are. And so he went and found you guys after obviously Jared informed him of that. I think you guys, I think Jared knew about that. So that's kind of the updates and everything. I don't remember exactly what big thing with Josh has happened. I know all of you guys have had these big kind of not world changing, big character changing events that have happened. And I feel like Josh wasn't as a part of the RPG before when we were doing it in 2014 or whatever.
He was really only there for the Bloomington arc.
Yeah, he was there for the Bloomington arc. And so, but I think his character is kind of on your side, Caleb, of let's rebuild the world. Yep. We can have civilization. We basically change the world.
Me and Jared who are Jared who's we should kill the bad people, and me who are everyone's bad people. And then we have Josh and Caleb who are
I mean, we kind of
something worth saving.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's definitely not that we think everybody's good people. But we're definitely way more optimistic about our chances in rebuilding the world from the ashes instead of just murdering everyone in our path.
Definitely.
So the kind of themes that I wanted to go for with this arc of Orphans is definitely the tension between the two halves of the party, you could say, and just the philosophical nature of what happens in an apocalypse. What happens when you take yourselves and you put yourself in a situation where everything has been taken from you. People in your life have been murdered. People in your life have died for no good reason. And now you're in the situation where you're faced with, is it even possible to rebuild the world? Should I hope to rebuild the world, or do I abandon all hope and become a utilitarian, become a pragmatist and say, hey, if you did something wrong, I'll kill you. Or I mean, you become a cowboy. You know what I mean? Like, there's no civilization, there's no law and order, there aren't any sheriffs around, so I'm going to go around and I'm going to kill whoever I think needs to die. Or I mean, kind of David's character, where it's like, I mean, what can we do to actually rebuild the world? Like, there's no hope for that kind of a thing, and so you have a completely different outlook on civilization, on like just trusting people in general. And so it's kind of like it's like a reality TV show that can't ever happen, where you guys are put in a situation where you're playing yourselves as characters in an RPG, but you guys aren't the same people you are, and you have different backstory, different experiences, and so you're having yourself do things you would never do because you aren't these people, but you are in some way, because or else you wouldn't feel it possible to play yourself.
They're caricatures of us.
You're imagining yourself with a slightly altered backstory 6 years in the future, where the world has been destroyed for those 6 years. So it's
16 years. No, sorry, 11 years in the future.
Oh, is it 11 now?
Well, 11 years in the future from 2015. So it's actually... No, it was 10. I remember very particularly it was 10 years. Yeah.
Okay.
So 2025 is when we started. It's 2026 in the actual real time in the game. So that means 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Right. So
2020 was like after the apocalypse.
Yeah, I know.
That's enough variables that the character is no longer close enough to you that you can have to worry about, feeling bad, basically.
This isn't actually me, I promise.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about it is it's, do you feel bad for having this be me and I'm killing this person? Like, especially now when we're doing it live, you know what I mean? I'm broadcasting. I killed this old lady, and it's like, whoa, but it's not me. It's not me.
It's a much more interesting thing when you're imagining yourself doing it, even if it's a personality that's different than yours.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So that's kind of the characters, that's kind of the themes. It is definitely going to be very dark.
Yeah. Which is going to be interesting because Fate itself is a pretty kind of lighthearted, pulpy game. So, I mean, but I imagine a lot of the compels will probably be pretty dark, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You guys will definitely have moments where you roll a +4, you know what I mean? And you guys do these insane, really cool moments. But I feel like the cool moments will be undertoned with gore, which will help set the tone.
Yeah.
And as well as you guys will have quips, and you guys are humorful, but it's very dark humor, because what else is there to joke about besides the fact that kid's over there starving and,
Doesn't that suck?
They have no parents. And,
Also, I hope you don't expect +4 to be the high end of rolls coming out of.
No, I mean, like, you rolled a +4. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
okay.
Like your roll was a +4.
Right,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't expect
not your final number. Yeah.
No, yeah. So it'd be kind of. I definitely. I feel I have a much bigger appreciation, I think, for characters being really cool and being able for you guys to be able to accomplish awesome things. I feel like I have more of an appreciation for that now as a GM, whereas before, if you guys started succeeding, I was like, well, I got to ramp up the stakes here, which is good. And I'm like, I'm supposed to do that. But I feel like you guys felt sometimes that I was stifling your victories without reason.
I don't really remember well enough to think, but I don't remember feeling that way necessarily.
Oh, okay. Well, I remember you guys. I remember feeling that you guys were feeling that way. So
we probably complained at you a lot, but that was also just because you may have been a worse GM back then, but we were also worse players. So
yeah. So I feel like, I feel like I've matured as a person too. Of course, and so coming into this now, I feel like this is going to be a bit of a different experience, but I think it's going to be all the more better for that.
The other big tool you have to control tone in this system is consequences, because you have take Nebula Jazz, where somebody gets injured and they the robot dog is malfunctioning. That's the injury, as opposed to I don't know, you get a compound fracture. There's a huge difference in the imagery that you create with injuries, and because they're literally just whatever you write down, you have a lot of power over what what the fiction is saying about the circumstance. Mechanically, it's the same. Having your dog slightly malfunction is the same as a compound fracture, as long as you put it in the same slot.
Right.
But obviously, one is much less amusing. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing. There are enough tools that even though it's hard to kill players in Fate, generally, it will still feel gritty if we use those tools right.
Yes, and I think two things that we didn't do very well before we were playing that I'm really excited to do more of is invoking aspects, especially your guys' troubles, and having you guys as players be able to invoke each other and be like, oh, I think it'd be really interesting if David shot this guy. Or I think it'd be really interesting if Caleb broke down crying right now because this is very traumatic. And you guys, actually, what is your trouble right now, Caleb? It used to be PTSD.
It's not PTSD anymore. It is the weight of the world on my shoulders.
Oh, okay. Well, still applicable there.
Yeah.
Or you freeze up. You don't know what to do. You're Kaladin, and you freeze up in a battle.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? We can have those really interesting moments that really, really make it so that you guys as players are creating the consequences to the stories more so than just me, which I think will be a lot of fun to mess around with, and it'll really take the antagonistic nature of GM to players a little bit better if you guys are able to control the story in a way that you guys normally can't in something like D&D.
Mm-hmm. It's also actually a strategic thing, because when you run out of fate points, you can no longer refuse compels unless the compels are from, you still can't refuse them from your fellow players either. But if your other fellow players compel you, you can move around fate points that way. If I run out, Jared could be like, I'm going to compel you to do something. And it has to be a legitimate compel. But you can be like, I'm going to compel you to do this thing so you can have one of my points because I have 4 and you have 0. Here's a point. And then, so it actually, the game incentivizes you to do that on multiple levels, which I think is pretty cool. As long as you're familiar enough with the game to make use of those things and see those opportunities come up.
And I'm excited. Practice. Yeah, I'm excited to play the system again, because I feel like we've gone so far in our understanding of role playing games and the way we interact with them that I think this will be a really fun experience, way more so than any other time we've played Fate Core. Because obviously there are limitations to what Fate Core can do, but I think we have a pretty good understanding of, 1, what those limitations are, and also 2, what the strengths of the system are and how we can play them. So should be fun.
And then the second thing that I think we didn't do well at all was consequences, like you said, David, which will have much darker undertones. But I feel like that was a huge thing that I missed out on in terms of GMing, where you guys felt super powerful. And so I kept throwing all this stuff at you, but you guys never had consequences that we could invoke narratively that made the story more interesting. So, for instance, you guys are in the heat of the battle, and Jared, I don't know, he has a severe consequence and he breaks his leg. Well, that has huge consequences for the rest of the story of what's going on. There's an next battle. Oh, well, Jared broke his leg. That adds so much more potential to have stakes in a story and have complications in the story. Whereas, okay, you guys are in the next battle. but they're stronger this time. But if you,
sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, but if you go into a scenario where Jared broke his leg, well, that makes so much more of an interesting story piece and an interesting battle. Whereas one person is fighting literally with a broken leg, and they have these consequences that can be invoked. Right. And I feel like that makes the story so much more narratively interesting, and it starts with an I, not invigorating. Maybe enthralling is what I'm looking for. That doesn't start with an I. But much more enthralling for the players, or not for the players. Well, also for the players, but for our listeners, for the viewers. So they have a story that feels more like a movie. Because that's what we try to do when we do these. Yeah, maybe engaging.
Engaging is a good word, yeah. Yeah, and I think describing, just using fictional positioning in the way we describe things to...
Yeah, definitely.
To I think give a tone will be really handy.
Yeah, so...
D&D drags over a lot of I attack him. And I think that's a real shame in a game like this, especially where that's just not as interesting in this game as it is in D&D even.
Yes.
So you have to have some narration there to make it interesting.
Yes.
And on the note of consequences, I feel like I don't really ever remember being hurt that bad, honestly. So I think part of it was just that, and it's very difficult to do combat in a way where like Fate really lets you pile on your stuff if you want.
Yes.
And so if your character's built for combat, it's very hard to overcome that without being cheesy, kind of, which I think is why you had to throw I mean, from my point of view, I was like, oh, I'm so good at this. I can't believe this guy out piloted me. But also, if you never put anybody with a high rank in there, I'll never fail.
Yes.
And that's obviously just as unrealistic. So it's like, I think part of it will be to balance that out, so that we are taking wounds, so that we can make use of them. Because I don't really ever remember being severely injured at all. I don't think.
I don't think anybody had ever had a consequence that was like more than a -2.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I can't remember any -2 consequences on top of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the worst thing that ever happened to me was I got hit by a grenade and I took a little bit of damage while I flew out a window. Like I
remember that.
And that I think was because, and I found this even with trying to make bonds, which is heavily built on the accelerated system. It can be kind of hard in this game to find a balance that isn't impossible to overcome, but is also like difficult because there's not a lot of variation between those in this system, in these systems. So, I get that for sure.
I think the more involvement with aspects is really going to help, so that if there is a situation where you guys are trying to protect somebody, and let's say I keep picking on you, David. So I'll pick on.
No, feel free. My character's an easy one to aim at because he's got obvious flaws. So it's fine.
Well, I was. You guys are trying to protect somebody, but David doesn't trust him. And so rather than having this big battle where you guys are protecting him, I can just say, well, David, I invoke you to shoot the guy you're trying to protect.
Exactly.
And that really messes with the game in an interesting way. Whereas I could say, well, you guys lose the battle and they kill him. Or I could say, well, David turns and shoots him. And that's so much more interesting.
Yeah.
I guess I shouldn't say so much more interesting. It's so different than what you'd normally have in an RPG. Whereas otherwise, David, you'd have to say, you know what? I want to do this. And that makes you feel bad as a player, having conflict with your party. But if I force you to do it by the mechanics of the game, then it adds so much more.
And that's what I like about systems like this is that the game itself is telling you how to make a good story, right?
Yes.
As opposed to D&D, which is you can have a really good miniature fight, and that's going to be fun. The game itself is not going to tell you how to make a good story. You're going to have to kind of do that on your own.
And sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm good.
Okay. The best part about it, I think, is that it's not just telling you, hey, when the GM says you have to do a thing, you have to do it. It gives you a resource to manage that, right? It's like, okay, you have this powerful tool to use. You have so many of them. They're pretty limited. If you play your character in the way that you would, you get more of this powerful thing. But if you want to push your character in a direction that doesn't make sense, it's going to cost you something because that's how people are, right?
Yes.
They're not very often counter to themselves. They are sometimes, And that's why you can say no as long as you have points. But oftentimes they're not. And it requires you, it almost forces a curve in your behavior that trends towards the character you've built. And I really appreciate that. I do have a little bit of an issue whenever a game allows you to just full on take control of a person's player character, which is why not being able to say no with 0 points sometimes rubs me the wrong way. But I feel like I see why that's a mechanic and why it works. And I appreciate,
because you as the player are aware of that, and you can decide to take that risk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and also you're the ones that make your aspects.
Yes. If you're in a position where you're being forced to do a thing you don't like, it's your own fault, which is why I remember you made a character in a Fate game where your weakness was that you lust after women. I think was the exact wording. The first time Caleb tried to compel you, were like, what? No, I don't want to do that. And we're like, you literally wrote the words.
Lust after women.
I really appreciate that. And it is definitely true that if you are uncomfortable with the thing, all you have to do to not have it happen is not put it on your character sheet.
Yeah.
And then there's no way for it to happen unless, it unfolds naturally, in which case there's hopefully things in place. But, it's like, it's your own fault if something comes up like that. So as much as I usually chafe against that thing, this game has a lot of mechanics that make it work really well.
I think it's interesting too, that you can run out of fate points because of a really tough battle. And then because you guys are stressed out as characters, I can invoke you guys to do something and you have to take it because you used all your face point on this really stressful battle. And it makes sense in a way because you guys you're spread thin. And then you come to a difficult decision and you cave one way because hey, you guys almost died. This is a really stressful situation. And so I can get you guys to do things that you don't want to do as players, but that when you think about it, my character would do that because this really stressful battle, this really tough situation. Even if you guys as players are like, I don't want to do that. I know that this isn't going to go well, but there's a way for me as a GM to kind of push the story in a direction without railroading it because the mechanics are there.
And that's a mindset you have to get in when you play Fate 2 is you have to not be afraid of that. Fate points are a good enough resource that as a player, you want them. I mean, literally the only thing in the game that makes it impossible for you to die is a fate point. Right. So you always want one fate point because no matter what, if you're killed, you can always fate point out of it. Right. And if you have one, right? And so at least for me, I'm always compelled to have at least one or encouraged to always have at least one. And so even I've actually had plenty of times in Fate games, and as you watch Nebula Jazz, you'll see the players all the time are like, "This is the worst thing my character could do in this moment. I'm so gonna do this. Can I have a Fate point because it's my character?" And more than often than not, the answer is yes. And I love that because not only does it encourage, and Caleb touched on this earlier, but not only is the GM encouraged to make you play your character, but you're encouraged to make you play your character because you can basically self-compel if you're like, I would like to do this very suboptimal thing. Can I have a point?
It's like min-maxing in a video game or like a karma system in a video game where you're like, well, this is a really evil thing, but I get a really big power up for it. So I'll kill them.
That's how you can tell that the game has strong mechanics is when you game the mechanics as hard as you can, the story gets better. Right.
Yes.
It's the same thing in
That's why I like Burning Wheel so much.
The harder you game the system, the better the story gets. And that's how you know it's well built. And that's one of the reasons why I built my ideal system or whatever on Fate Accelerated, because I can't really think of a better structure to force to encourage that. Than, just encouraging you and rewarding you for metagaming, right? For playing the system, because that makes the story better. Unlike a lot of games where playing the system makes the story cheesy or unbelievable, right? And that's one of the things I really appreciate about the system. And in this setting especially, it will make it a big difference because this is a setting of difficult choices and suboptimal people and wounded people, right? So we need to be watching people do the things that you don't want to do as players because that's what makes the setting believable. And honestly, we'll get the tone across better than anything else could. Even like gritty combat could,
what's so disappointing that this isn't an Idle Inspiration episode.
I honestly, it's long enough. We could probably just make it one.
I might cut out this section and make it one. That would be kind of interesting.
Probably
that
could.
Makes sense to me.
Honestly, it could just be our Fate Core review at this point.
Yeah.
Just on top of it and be like, hey, we review Fate Core in lieu of or in preparation for our
right thing. Connor, is there anything else campaign related you want to talk about?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things. So the other thing I want to give more of a background to is the setting. So because of we were kind of going back and forth about what setting we wanted to do, and we were kind of like, well, a zombie apocalypse would be a lot of fun, and we kind of fought back on that because that's so cliche, it's so overused. We were like, what about just a normal apocalypse, like
average, ordinary, everyday nuclear holocaust?
Right, like there's nothing supernatural about it. It's something that could actually happen. And we went with that. The one thing that's like kind of supernatural, you could say, is the radiation poisoning that doesn't act like it would in our world, but it's something that could theoretically happen with microevolution, where radiation could affect animals in a specific way to make them like they're like dire animals, like in D&D, I guess, because that one bear that you guys fought was like super strong and like feral. So it's like rabies, except it makes them stronger. And that's kind of how we went with radiation poisoning, which means the setting is very dangerous. Not only are there just like spots of the world that are just uninhabitable right now because of the
fallout.
Yeah, the fallout, but ground zero for the nukes. So Chicago is done. You can't go to Chicago. If you do, you're going to get radiation sickness and die. And there are places of the world that are have been affected by the radiation sickness, which makes them like dangerous territory because their animals can get radiation sickness and be feral animals that will attack people and are super strong and powerful, which also means in the setting, and this is just kind of a bonus fact, that means there are sea monsters, like legitimate sea monsters that are in the ocean.
Dang.
Which makes boat travel like much more difficult now too.
That's cool.
Did you guys not? Did I never talk to you guys about that?
No.
I don't think we've ever talked about that. Yeah.
So.
Oh, okay. Maybe I was keeping that as a secret in case you guys ever got in a boat. But
we know now. I mean, we're literally in the heartland of America, so I really doubt it's going to happen.
Well, I mean, there was a lot of Germany and Europe talk there, but
yes,
that was before.
I don't know. So, I excluded Germany from Europe there, but anyways, go ahead.
So that's kind of the setting, and then the plot. You guys definitely, there is some, I guess you could say, perceived supernaturalness to the prophets having predicted the nukes and the apocalypse and that kind of a thing, but it's not necessarily supernatural. And I'm not saying it is supernatural, or I'm basically saying it's not supernatural. But from your guys' character's perspective, that's something that keeps you up at night. Like, what the heck? This is so bizarre. And so there's a lot of different things like that to the setting that seems supernatural, but it's technically possible. That's why The Last of Us is so interesting, because there is actually a fungus that affects ants like a zombie apocalypse would.
Right.
And so it's not impossible that microevolution can happen, and that fungus could affect a human brain instead of just an ant's. Like, that's a legitimate possibility that could theoretically happen. So that's kind of the setting we're playing with. Is it's not a zombie apocalypse or like Fallout would be, like a supernatural type of we're doing our own thing, but it's not supernatural. It's real to life,
grounded. Yeah,
it's grounded in, we know,
plausibility.
Yeah, it's grounded in plausibility. And so that's kind of the setting. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on is the map that we have. We actually have a map that we found that we're going to kind of use as kind of like a hex to hex travel, where you guys will have like different places and different communities and different like side quests, you could say, that you guys could explore, that I'll kind of fill in the hexes for and have it be
West Marches style. That's sick.
Yeah, we'll kind of do like an actual like journey, and because you guys know where the nukes are, you guys are going to the nukes, and you guys can kind of decide which of the 3 locations you want to go to try to find the nukes. And I Googled it, and for whatever reason, either the government is lying to us, which is a very genuine possibility. Who wouldn't believe that? Or it is actually public knowledge as to where the nuclear devices are located, like the nuclear warheads are located. And so I Googled that, and it didn't seem to be clouded in like, oh, this is just suspected. It was like, yeah, these nuclear warheads are here. And I was like, huh, what? So we're actually going off of real life places. We're going off of real life facts. So
like military bases where warheads are. Yeah.
Yes. And so that's where you guys are told the warheads are. That's where the GPS tracking location is pointing you to, is these 3 places where the nukes actually would be if this happened. And we're going to explore a lot of that. Like the city you guys are in Nebraska, that's an actual city that you guys went to and that you guys became the mayor of, or that you became the mayor of, Caleb. Mm-hmm. That's an actual city that we chose in Nebraska that you guys are in. And so as we explore the world, we will be exploring an actual, like our actual world. So if you guys go to a city, or if you guys go to, if you guys have this landmark, that'll be something that I Googled on Google Maps or whatever and actually found, okay, this is this landmark. This is where you guys actually are on the world. And because of satellites and Google Maps, I can actually do that. And that's just an added aspect and fun thing we get to do with the RPG that we're in, is we can actually zone in on an area, and I can say, this warehouse over here, this is the battle zone, or this railroad track, this is here, this abandoned train, or whatever it is. It can be plausible things that you guys discover and find, because that's the world.
You know what would be the coolest thing ever? Is if someone created, based on Google Maps, a procedurally generated system where you could designate the shadow of a building on Google Maps as a certain kind of building, and then it would randomly generate a map. So if you're like, I want this building to be a hospital, it would randomly generate a hospital that would fit in that shape on the map, on Google Maps, and make it a hospital that you could
that'd be cool.
Characters in and fight in. I don't know. Sorry. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's a cool idea. Cool. I'm sure the technology to do that exists, but I'm sure it costs millions of dollars. Yeah.
But it would take a lot of work.
It would just take time and work. Yeah.
Yeah, because you'd have to build all the. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. So those are the other things that I wanted to get into for like the RPG, the setting. It's going to be dark. I did want to say I have one scenario in mind that I legitimately might give like a content warning at the beginning of the episode of like this is mature talk. Like the setting of this scenario, like trigger warning or something like that, because there is an idea that's floating around in my head that I might go with, but I might not, just because it's so dark. But I really want to play with your guys' psychologies. And so we'll see what I ended up doing with that.
Will probably be one, if not the only, of the games we've ever played where we should probably actually do a
safety tools thing.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, there's a million variations of them, but we probably ought to do one of those beforehand, just because. That's
what I was thinking. And basically, I think it would be good, Connor, to just talk as players. We don't necessarily need to stream this, but
no, we probably wouldn't record that.
Right. Just talking about what is specific parts of content that you just don't want to be in this campaign. Say if one of us is like, I just don't want children to be harmed. In this, that triggers me. I just don't want it.
I mean, it's kind of too late for that already, but yeah,
it is kind of too late for that already. But
for that one specifically,
yeah. But those sorts of things.
But going forward, yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm, yeah, right. I don't want sexual assault to be a part of it. Right. That's fine. I think that would probably be helpful, just in case any of us are like, I don't know, we should just stay away from this entirely, sort of thing. Because I feel like most of the time, even though we tend to go a little bit dark with our game sometimes, I don't think it's ever really been necessary to like legit sit down with everybody and be like, okay, is there anything in particular that we shouldn't touch on?
Right.
Because with a game like this that's intentionally tonally very dark and gritty, it's probably good to at least put a couple of boundary markers up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that'll be good. I think we should do that for Tuesday, just before we start the session.
Yeah, just before we start the session, we'll talk briefly about it.
Yeah. And that sounds good to me. Okay, so then the only other thing we wanted to talk about that's not necessarily in-game RPG related was your Patreon. So I don't know if you wanted to take that or...
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So Connor messaged me a while ago and or maybe it was a phone call we were having or something. But we were talking about this campaign and some ideas to kind of like involve you guys, the people who watch the shows, anyone who's interested in the content that we produce here, to get a little bit more involved in this campaign. Now, because this campaign is about us as alternate versions of ourselves, right, in this post-apocalyptic world, and the original game when we played it in person was about adding our friends in if they just wanted to play with us and being like, okay, hey, if you had an alternate version, like what would you be like? And then that was like part of the real fun of the game was this kind of like sporadic rotating cast of characters that were actually our friends, but like an alternate version of them. We kind of want to see if we can do something similar to that for this campaign, but with the community, like on my Discord and anyone else who watches the content. And so what we have kind of figured out is probably the best way to do this is for anyone who gives any amount on my Patreon. So patreon.com/CalebMpower. So $1 is enough to get you this. And I'll probably update the tiers on Patreon to like actually reflect this as a special thing. But you can make a character for this campaign, right? Connor will insert you as an NPC in the game in one capacity or another. I'm sure you can like specify, hey, I don't want to be this, that, or the other thing. Can you introduce me like this in this sort of situation? And Connor obviously will have final say over, how your character plays in the actual game, but you can give him guidelines for like what you want to see.
I would say, give me a general overview of who you are, kind of your like, I guess you could say aspects. You don't have to write out aspects, but like, what is your character about? And you can give me like suggestions for like setting or how I'd be introduced, that kind of a thing. And I probably won't always take those, but I would like the ideas. But I won't always take. But what I will always take is, this is who I am. Like, this is the kind of person my character is. Yeah. And I'll put it in like that. I won't for sure say that I won't take your character with how the player characters interact with your character. I won't say that you won't stray from that original person.
And just to make sure that's not a double negative, what Connor is saying is your character may stray from the initial character concept you give him because of the way the game plays.
Yeah.
And again, Connor is the final arbiter of the NPCs in the game. So, but we want you to be involved. We want to give you opportunities to make fun characters for this campaign. Give Connor NPCs that he can do fun things with, and then you can watch along and be like, "Hey, that's me." Right? Yes. And what we want to, I was going to say, and what we want to do is, this is you, right? Like, give us an alternate version of you, right? And I guess if you really don't want that, I guess that's probably fine too. But that's kind of like the conceit of the game. So it would be really fun to make this an alternate version of you that has something different about them that would make sure so you could survive the apocalypse. I mean, if you are a person who would already be able to survive the apocalypse, feel free to just make it you. But in some way, you have to have been like able to kind of survive the last 11 years, in this nuclear wasteland.
So these can be crazy things. These can be simple things. And I kind of give a couple of examples. Let's say, you're a blacksmith. And so you're in a community and you just make tools for the community, and you're married, or you are, you're a blacksmith, but now you're kind of put in a different scenario and you kind of have to protect the village. Something like that. Give me kind of like a general idea of who you are, what you're good at, where you might be in a situation or a setting, and then give me like what your character believes. You know what I mean? Like I will protect people at all costs, or I'm actually kind of a vigilante and that kind of a thing. Another character idea could be something crazy like you started your
own cult.
You started your own cult, or you were this goat herder, and you started this like
Harvard.
What?
Harvard the goat herder.
Oh yeah, you started like you became like the overlord of these other goat herders, and you are the king of the goats, and everybody brings your goats. You can pick the best goats from your other underlings, and you have this empire of goat herding, something ridiculous like that.
So you can strain
to the populace.
Yeah. You can strain plausibility, but probably shouldn't break plausibility with the setting that Connor has already established, yes. Right? So you can't be a psychic,
if you say, yeah.
Right? You can't be an alien.
Yeah,
this is you.
Yeah,
you know.
And now, granted, if you say something ridiculous like "I'm an alien," I might take that to mean something else and just put you in anyway. But by alien, you're a foreigner. You're from South America, and you traveled up during the apocalypse and whatever.
Yeah.
Or you were a tourist in America and you got stuck there. And you don't speak English, and it's hard, and whatever. I'll do something fun like that. Now, I will say, not every character is going to be a Patreon subscriber, I guess you could say. Yep. Mostly because I don't expect too many people to be involved with this to the point where I, like won't be able to make just somebody of my own. I'm like, I got to fit all these NPCs in here. And just because I have like ideas already of like, I have an idea for this person in this community, or have an idea for, whoever. And those are kind of already set in my mind. Now you could tell me, hey, I want to be this person. And I might just be like, oh, well, I already had an idea for that character, and I'll put you
just
in that role.
Just kind of assimilate them. Yeah.
Or like the big bad guy of what is it called? The BBG?
Big bad evil guy.
Bad evil guy.
BBEG.
BBEG. Okay. If you wanted to be that person and you give me a cool story for why you're that person, I'll do it. I'll put you in. And there were like the dictator of Germany now, or whoever is kind of the BBEG, you could say. And so if you give me I would be this person. I would do whatever. And the thing I change about myself is I'm of German descent, and that's where I am.
I do have people in my community that are from Germany.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, like if that's the kind of character you want to make, and you want to do that, and I like it, I mean, I'll put it in. And I think this will help me more than it'll hinder me. You know what I mean? I won't feel hindered by people sending me like, this is my character and this is who I am, or this is the setting I want to be in. I'll be like, oh, that's a super cool idea. I'm going to make a whole city around this concept, or this idea, this scenario. I'll make a whole like session off of, you guys go to this small goat herding village, and there's this overlord here that you guys have to put in his place, or whatever. Like that sounds super interesting to me, and it can be crazy, because crazy things happen during a nuclear apocalypse.
Yep. I think we assume.
Well, we assume. Who knows? So I feel like it'll really help me come up with ideas that I wouldn't normally come up with myself. And it'll feel so interesting for our viewers, because not only will you be listening and thinking, oh, when do I come in? Like, when is my character going to get here? But you'll also be like, oh, this is a real person. Like, a real person was like, I want to be a goat overlord. And that's super cool.
And that is the thing, right? Like, I pretty much, most of the characters you're going to be introducing are going to be real people that we know, or that are going to be part of the community that give to the Patreon. Yeah. So obviously I'm sure there'll be some people that will be fictitious people, because we don't know everyone, We don't know a bunch of people who live in Nebraska necessarily. So
yeah, well, and you guys are going to be moving from Nebraska.
True.
It's like the first goal you guys are doing is moving from Nebraska elsewhere. But I'd also like to say Connor, it has a crew of people that have been doing like guerrilla warfare tactics in Europe against Germany. So if you wanted to be a part of that crew, put that in as well. If you're a hacking specialist and that's what you want to do, and that's the kind of character you want to make, and you want to be a part of Connor's crew, well, then you're a recurring, like almost main character, you could say. Like you're going to be there as a part of the squad as the squad is traveling across the country.
Yeah.
And I know that your 3 current subscribers to Patreon are going to be a part of that crew.
Technically, I have 4, but one of them is Josh, so he obviously already has a character.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing as well. I mean, if Josh wants to tell me he wants to make a weird NPC character, like I'll do that. Or I have a character in mind that he might enjoy, and I might just be like, "Thanks for subscribing. This is your reward.
This is for you. This is for you, Josh.
This is what you ordered."
Yeah, and so obviously the people who are already subscribing to the Patreon, I'll send them messages. I'll get them involved. Get their character ideas. But yeah, anyone who is going to, if this sounds interesting to you and you want to just drop a buck on the Patreon, and you don't have to like be a returning subscriber. You can literally just give us $1 and then cancel your subscription. There you go, you're in, right?
Yep.
So we right, like you go ahead and as soon as you do that, you can message me on Patreon. But one way or another, I can obviously track who gives me on Patreon, and I will message you if you don't message me, and I will make sure that we get your idea in. And get you involved. There's something else I was just going to say. Yeah, I don't know what I was going to say. Continue. I don't know if there's anything else you have to add there.
Well, I was going to say it might be really fun to mix these storylines too. Let's say 5 people have ideas for their characters, and I put them all in the same community.
Yeah.
And watch them interact.
Yep.
I think that'd be a lot of fun. And I guess the feel of the RPG, and I kind of already told you guys this as players the last time we did this, but the feel of the RPG is definitely going to be kind of episodical in the sense that you guys are going from point A to point B. And along the way, we're going to have lots of side quests. You have lots of communities you guys go to, and you have moral quandaries here.
Sure.
There is a goat overlord, and you're like, well, what do we do about this? Or do we just move on? We get our supplies, and we just move on.
I think I would honestly be the person to suggest we move on from the goat overlord town.
You ever heard the song Curl of the Burl? The first line is, I killed a man because he killed my goat.
Well, that's what David based Harvard, the goat herder, on in Chrome Inquisitors.
Yeah, it is.
That'll be the song we play in between sessions. Or in between breaks.
In between breaks, yeah.
Because he killed my goat. So good.
Yeah, so I know that we did kind of do a session for Jared's bachelor party where we kind of got people together and they were on their journey, right? And we guys started off. You guys kind of dealt with character reasons, that kind of a thing, which would kind of have been a lame way to start off the RPG. I think it'd be really fun that we start off the RPG with a bang where you guys are driving and there's a burning car on the road, right? Because that's where we left off. And so that's kind of where we'll pick up, and I'll create some story there for you guys to kind of build off of. And then the story is you guys are going from point A to point B. And if things change and you guys decide you're not going to point B and that kind of a thing, like that's fine. I don't want to make it seem like it's railroaded of this is the story, don't stray from it. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of the goal right now. And that'll be kind of how we play out is we'll look at that hex map and I'll be able to say, well, you guys know that there's a city here, or you guys know that there's something here. And you guys can kind of like go to places or not go to places where I have a whole session set up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I could be like, well, there's this thing here. I don't know how exactly it's going to go, but this is going to happen if you guys go here. And you guys might go through that city and just move on. And it might never happen. But I want you guys to feel like you guys have that power as players, that if something doesn't seem interesting to you, or you guys just didn't realize that there was this secret underground slave trade going on that you guys were supposed to have this big character development for, but you guys just didn't
We failed our roles. Yeah,
whatever. And so you guys just keep going. And I want you guys to feel like it's exciting and you have that freedom of like an open world RPG, that you guys get to make these choices that could, like, there is a story over here or there is a story over here. And it's set up, and it just depends on where you want to go. So I feel like that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
I guess the only other question I had was, do you have a basic idea of how long you think the campaign's going to be?
No.
No idea? Yeah.
No, not at all. If everything went according to the plan that's in my head, maybe 8 sessions. But
oh, really?
Are things going to go according to plan?
Right.
No. Yeah. And I know that things are going to change for sure. From
what you originally, I was going to say, from what you originally said, it sounded like it was going to take a lot longer than 8 sessions.
Maybe, okay. Let me lengthen that and say maybe it'd take 10. And I guess it depends on how long our sessions are. Because in my head, I'm hoping that you'll go from one hex to another. For each session is a hex. You know what I mean?
Okay.
You go to this community, you deal with this thing here, and then you guys are leaving the city. And that'll be where we pick up the next session, where you guys decide which hex you go to next, and we do a session there.
So, I mean, where were we going originally?
You guys were going to go from Nebraska to either Texas or Montana, and there's
that's
also
a lot of hexes, man.
Well, show me the map real quick.
It should be on there. Roll20. You should just be able to look at it.
Oh,
like Omaha's right here. I feel like we were like here. I think this was the hex that we were on.
Started on Roll20, you said?
Yeah, on Roll20.
I don't see it.
This little bend. Oh, because you're a GM, you have to go ahead and click the drop down menu at the top. Little map icon, page toolbar, top right.
Page toolbar.
Yep.
Okay.
And click on the hex map.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I can drag David there, but
beautiful.
I can't drag you there.
Yeah.
Oh, that is a lot of hexes.
Yep.
But also, it looks like a lot of these are just empty terrain. So, honestly, you could just have it be important to Texas.
Yeah,
Texas.
I guess that'll be kind of where for whatever reason in my head, these hexes were so much bigger.
No.
So I guess
very small.
Yeah. What I'll see if I can do, and I don't know how well you could do this, Gail, but could you theoretically make little icons for me where I could put something down?
Oh yeah, sure, of course.
Okay. So I think it was from wherever you just highlighted. Was it like here or something like that?
I think it was like this little bend in the road here. And obviously people on the stream or people on the video right now aren't seeing what we're looking at all. But
and then you guys were going up to here, this airport here. This is legitimately the military base. I think this is correct. I don't think it's this one over here, because I think this is it's one of these two where this little like airplane or like jet represents a military base, which is legitimately where the nuclear warheads are held in this area. So it's one of these two. So that you guys would kind of travel to that area.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look. So there's one in North Dakota, one in Montana, and then there's 2 in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of where.
I mean, it's perfect. We go to Texas, and we take those 2, and we fire them at the other 2. We win.
There you go. That works.
Yeah. So I forget. I think it's San Antonio that has, or no, I think it's more towards Dallas. So I think it's here by Oklahoma City. I think is where the 2 are in Texas. Or it could be the one down here closer to Dallas. But like these actually represent like military bases, which I'm so impressed with not only this map, but the public knowledge of how we know these things or why the public knows these things is just incredible to me. So that'll be kind of how it goes. And I have a feeling that the interaction between players, the interaction with the NPCs that are going along on Connor's crew, as well as the random encounters that I have in my head of like just these like weird, quirky, and like exciting ideas for some things that can happen that I don't think it'll ever get to be a drag. Where, yeah, it'll probably be like every 3 hexes or whatever, I'll have something planned.
Yeah.
And have maybe something that doesn't take a whole session, maybe something that takes 2 sessions, and we'll just kind of play it by ear.
Sure. Sounds good. But the idea is that the whole campaign is the journey to the place and then what happens at the place.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm trying not to plan what will happen when you guys get there. I have ideas of what will happen to you guys when you get there, but I don't know what you guys will decide or what the roles will be. Yeah. I wanted to make it so that you guys could legitimately fail or you guys could legitimately succeed.
Sure.
And so there could be a part 3 or a season 3 or whatever you want to call it. Or this could be the end, and I don't know. And we'll just have to see what happens when we get there. We might even have to have like a family discussion afterwards and be like, all right, what do you guys think? Do we do this again? Do we have a place that this goes next? Or is this the end of the story?
Yeah.
And what does that look like? We might have to end the session after the climax and then pick it up next time and have like a anime style epilogue. Okay, where is this person? Right. What are they doing?
Yeah.
So we'll just kind of see and play by ear. And I think we'll have a lot more discussion off screen this time around than we normally would, because we'll end a session and be like, what next? And kind of see where we land.
Well, you know what might be interesting, Connor? Would people be interested? So role play, back when they existed, used to do after show videos, right? Where they talked about the breakdown of like the session and what they liked, what they didn't like, those sorts of things. And they put it on their Patreon. Is that a thing that since we're kind of looking at doing this anyway, is that, and they would only be like 15 minutes to half an hour, right? Like,
that's fine for me, as long as we would want to end the sessions a little bit earlier then, because of that.
Right.
Our tendency is to end 15 to 30 minutes late, like as a generous guess. Sometimes it's more like an hour. So if we were ending like 5 minutes early or something like that, then it wouldn't really be that big of a deal. But
so I'm thinking we should really try to keep the session, like if at all possible, because I think you can probably make it by 8 your time, by 8 CST, Connor, usually, right? That's a pretty reasonable time. And I'm thinking we do 8 to 9, or I'm just going to use PST because I'm PST. So 6 to 7:30, right? So hour and a half, and then we do 7:30 to 9. So we do 2 kind of sort of hour and a half chunks, and then we take 15 minutes at the end, right, to do a quick video.
Yeah, that's fine with me. And then for you, David, I think, because I'm also the person who is like, we would need to end it by a certain time because I need to get to bed because I work the next day. It'll be easier for us to have a more strict deadline, because I'm also the guy who has to go to bed. So I think, hopefully we don't have to worry about that as much. And
also because of I think it sounds like the game is going to be loose enough that we can certainly just be like, all right, we just end it here and we can pick up next time. There doesn't need to be like because I mean, and it also specifically because this is a campaign and not one shots that we're doing, right? One shots tend to be like, we need to wrap up everything in the story now, as opposed to this, and also particularly this because unlike Legacy, for example, there's a particular zoom in, zoom out to a lot of stuff, and it's really hard to like stop in the middle of something. Whereas opposed to Orphans, we could literally stop at any point. So we can just be like, oh, the hour, we hit the hour, we're done, right? Cliffhanger, wherever we're at, and then just pick it up next time.
And I am confident enough in my skill as a GM to make an ending that is an actual cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Where, okay, this happens.
Yep.
And we'll pick up where we left off here.
Yeah, I think it would be really cool and fun to treat this campaign as professionally as possible.
Yes, right? That's my goal.
So obviously we're going to be a little bit laxer with the exact start time because sometimes you will be a little bit later than 8. But I think if we assume 8 CST, start immediately at that time, hour and a half break, hour and a half after show video. That will be a fun routine, I think, and I think we'll get into it, get into the hang of it, and it should work pretty well.
As well as what I'm finding with my job actually is that I've been getting the same route. Is going to Middleton for my route, and I've been getting really good at my route. Whereas yesterday, I think I got home at like 6 because I just shot through my route. I just did everything great, and then for days like had Wednesday, they'll ask. I got done similarly early, and they asked me like, do you want to pick up totes from other people and help them on their route? So for Tuesdays, I'll just always say no. And so if I'm done early, I can get back early because if I'm going fast on my day, on my route, if I'm in Middleton, I can I know the area, so I'm a lot faster. And so I'm able to kind of control the time a little bit better. And I've been noticing that because I'm so good at that route, they've been putting me on that route. So I'm hoping that we won't have as many.
And the main, I was going to say, the main reason I bring up the after show videos is because I think it might be a fun way to, we can get the community involved with the, hey, give any sort of money, but they'll want to keep subscribing, keep giving monthly, because then they get the after shows every week, right? I think that would be a fun way to start. And I've wanted to do something like that for a while now, because I think it's real. We kind of do that sort of stuff anyway in a lot sometimes. But I think it would be fun to have like legit, here's a Patreon thing that we put up every time after a session. And I think I'm going to start rotating that in the new games that I start. So I think it'd be fun to start with this one, experiment a little.
Yeah, and I feel like the idea of being able to put yourself in an RPG is such a great way for people to get involved and to love listening to the episodes. Whereas it's a lot more plausible for people to be like, hey, this is a really fun show, you should listen to it. And the community will get bigger. And when the community gets bigger, the world itself will get bigger because there'll be more people in the world. And I think that's super exciting. And I kind of want to do something as well. It's not just your Patreon, but share the show. Tell people about the show and send me your character and I'll make you in there. You know what I mean? So that if people are getting out the word about this show existence on social media or whatever, or just telling somebody, we could become the next role play. You know what I mean? And be able to have these stories that are really fun, really exciting, enthralling, and philosophically motivated,
Interesting.
I just use the word interesting too much.
Provoking.
So I'm trying to provoking. Philosophically provoking, especially this type of story, that people will be interested enough to say, hey, this is a really fun show, you should listen to this. And we'll be able to get the word out. So then when we start Crow Inquisitors season 4 or whatever else is next, we'll be so much more motivated to be professional and to make this awesome, because we know we have a fan base that is actually enjoying this and wants more of it. Because I feel like it's kind of like when you do a musical, when you're a part of a musical or a play, when the audience is into it and you can feel the
energy
in the room because people are clapping, people are cheering after every song or whatever. You automatically are like, I'm going to give these people a show. I'm going to put more effort into this because I know people are watching and they're enjoying it, and I don't want to let them down. I want to entertain. And that's kind of why we do this show, is we want to entertain people. We want to put this content out there and these stories out there so people can enjoy it. And so if we know that people are enjoying it and that people are, telling their friends about it and they're becoming characters in it, they're invested. We know that these people are invested. It'll be just as exciting for me to have something happen to one of the NPC characters that people paid for us to be in there or shared the show or whatever, however we do that. It'll be so much, people will be invested in it just as much as you guys are as a player characters of what will happen next with my person. How am I going to end up? Am I going to end up living? Am I going to end up dying? Will I die the heroic death that I told that I told Connor to have me die? Whatever it is, people will be invested in the show, and that'll be super exciting. That'll be exciting for us. It'll be exciting for the listeners. I just feel like this is such a unique opportunity to be involved.
I'm really excited about it. Mm-hmm. Cool stuff. You got anything else, or are we about wrapped?
No. Share us. Put us out there. We want to become the next big thing. Make our dreams come true.
Yep. Go ahead and go to patreon.com/CalebMpowers. Give any amount, and you get access to your own character implanted into our upcoming campaign, Orphans of the American Dream, coming this Tuesday, ? I mean, probably that's the plan.
This Tuesday.
Catastrophic schedule failure might happen, but the plan is Tuesday nights, approximately 6 p.m. PST, 8 p.m. CST.
It could be earlier than that. Hopefully it'll be earlier than that this time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But I mean, you can obviously look at my Twitter, @CalebMpowers, to check out like when specifically we're going live. Also, go ahead and join my Discord. I always post announcements in there when things are happening. And there's a thriving community in there. People are talking every day in there, having a lot of fun. And I'll put the link to that in the liner notes of this, in the description of the YouTube video for this. So yeah, come check it out. Come give it the Patreon, be a part of the campaign, and watch yourself die. Probably by David's hand, probably. Also, one thought I just did have 1 second is, or real quick before we end, is since we're also doing content warning sort of stuff for players, I think it would probably be you should do this too. If you as a listener are like, I don't want my character to be sexually assaulted ever. It would very, very unlikely that would ever happen on screen anyway, or not even on screen, but
I would say that's something will for sure.
That's usually something we would just stay away from. But if you have any particular, because obviously this is going to be a kind of a grittier, darker game.
I don't want my character to drown, for instance.
Right. If you have a particular phobia of drowning, you're just I just don't want to ever witness that. You can go ahead and put that in there as well when you message about it. But
I feel like something that's actually plausible is I have a family in this apocalyptic world. Don't murder my children.
Right.
Okay, make sure your children live.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yep. So go ahead and do that as well. And obviously, I'll get in touch with anyone who gives to the Patreon. But if you want to jump the gun and message me on Patreon as soon as you give, feel free to do that as well, and we'll get you started. I think one thing I did also think of is the crew, Connor. I'm gonna try to get this video out as soon as possible, but I feel like you should try to be vague with the crew for the first couple sessions, just in case people wanna be added in, right? That's so that you don't officially announce every member of the crew right away.
Uh-huh.
So there's a little bit of holes there.
The only people that do know, the only person I should say that does know every member of the crew is Jared. And Jared's not going to interact with every single person day one. So I feel like it'll be really easy for either Connor or Jared to be like, oh, I have a guy for that. And then we introduce a character. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's really easy. Cool. And then the other thing I was going to say is I'm super excited for this RPG, and I hope that gets people pumped up for it. I hope that gets you guys pumped up for it. Mickey and I were making dinner tonight, and she was like, so you're going to be the one that's GMing the next one? And she's like, are you excited? And I was like, yeah, super excited. I'm at work and I'm listening to music all day. Whereas normally I listening to podcasts and thinking about my current life situation and, whatever. And last couple of days, I've just been listening to instrumental music, just plotting out different scenarios. And
that's how I know. I was going to say, that's how I know I'm excited for a campaign too, is where I've made a playlist and I'm just listening to it on repeat, imagining scenes. Yeah.
So I'm really excited about it. And I've even been Googling things is it possible to do this in an apocalypse? How do you make this? Could somebody make this in the apocalypse? So I've been Googling stuff, and I don't want to say anything, so I don't want to give away
how easy is it to murder someone like this?
Yeah, well, no. We're going to take liberties with murder. Yeah.
Dave will be doing that Googling. Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited to play a character for the first time in a long time. So,
and I'm excited to have us in the Fate core system where we've matured so much as players. Yeah. So I feel like I'm really excited to play with invokes and make a really fun story where we have our characters do things we don't want to do as players, but be forced to because, hey, this makes an interesting story. This isn't the downfall of my character. I think that'll be so much fun to mess around with.
Yeah, for sure. Well, cool. That is our video. Thanks for watching this kind of like preliminary kind of sneak peek of Orphans of the American Dream. We're excited about it, and we're excited to continue making cool RPG content. You can also, of course, check out the ongoing podcast actual play RPG campaign, the kind of adaptation of our first campaign we ever streamed on here, and go listen to Crow Inquisitors. So go to crowinquisitors.com. All the links are there to subscribe to whatever you listen to podcasts on. Go check that out. Jared was just messaging us all day yesterday about how he was listening back through the episodes and all the fun times that we had there. So if you're interested in fantasy role-playing games, go check that out. I'm sure you'll enjoy that too. And go give it the pay. Yeah.
Sorry, he came into after a delivery and was like, I remember that everyone hated me, but I forgot how much they all hated you too. And I was like, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Jared and David's characters were much hated in that RPG. But we all had fun.
The first few sessions they were, and then
it's all good fun. Sorry, finish your.
I was just gonna say, go give it to the Patreon, and get involved, and we're excited to start it.
And I have to say, the Crow Inquisitors podcast, it is very professional. It sounds really good.
Thank you very much.
You've handcrafted your own music for it. It's a lot of fun, and I'm hoping that with that level of professionalism you're putting out with that podcast, and us trying to be as professional as possible with this next campaign we're doing, we'll really get out there and become something bigger, because we really enjoy doing this. We always want to make the time to do this, but it'll be so much more motivational if we know we have even just a small crowd of people that are invested in the story. It makes things so much more fun for us, so much better quality, because we know people are watching. So tell your friends, get this out there. The more people know, the better the show will be, just by default.
Mm-hmm. Yep, cool. All right, that's it. We're out. See ya.